Have you ever felt like you're living life on a different frequency than everyone else? You watch people ask for help with ease, state their needs without apology, and trust others without a second thought. And it feels like watching a foreign film without subtitles. You might even be praised for your strength, your incredible self-reliance, and your ability to handle anything that comes your way. But privately, you know the truth. This strength wasn't a choice, it was a necessity. It was forged in an environment where your needs were not only unmet, but often seen as an inconvenience or an attack. Today, we're going to explore the unique psychological blueprint of daughters raised by narcissistic parents and the unusual traits that emerge from this specific, challenging childhood. Psychology suggests that our earliest relationships form the very architecture of our minds. For the daughter of a narcissistic parent, this foundation is built on shifting sand. A narcissistic parent, particularly a mother, often sees her daughter not as a separate individual, but as an extension of herself, an accessory to be polished for public display, or a mirror to reflect her own desires. The daughter's role is to fulfill the parent's emotional needs, not the other way around. This fundamental reversal of roles creates a profound and lasting impact. Your purpose as you learned it was to be a source of validation, a narcissistic supply, for the person who was supposed to be your safe harbor. Because of this, you learned to navigate a world where love was conditional, approval was transactional, and your authentic self was a liability. One of the most common yet misunderstood traits is a fierce, almost compulsive hyper-independence. On the surface, it looks like resilience. You're the one who never asks for help, who figures everything out on her own, who can weather any storm without complaint. But this isn't just a preference, it's a survival strategy encoded into your nervous system. Do you remember being a child and needing something? Comfort, help with homework, or just a moment of attention? What happened next? Was your need met with warmth, or was it met with irritation, dismissal, or even anger because it interrupted your parents' focus on themselves? You quickly learned a powerful unconscious lesson. My needs are a problem. Asking for something causes pain, either to me or to them, which then comes back to me. To avoid this pain, you decided, without even realizing it, to stop needing. You became your own parent, your own comforter, and your own provider at an age when you should have been focused on simply being a child. This hyper-independence is a fortress you built to protect a very vulnerable part of yourself. Inside that fortress is the child who was taught that her dependency was a weakness, and her feelings were an inconvenience. So now, as an adult, the very idea of relying on someone else can trigger a deep, primal fear. It feels like giving up control, and for someone whose childhood was defined by a lack of control and emotional chaos, control is everything. You learned that the only person you could truly count on was yourself. This isn't a cynical worldview. It's an empirical conclusion based on your earliest data. The problem is that this fortress, while it keeps you safe from perceived threats, also keeps you isolated. It prevents the very connection and support that you, like all human beings, fundamentally need. It's an exhausting way to live, constantly holding up the weight of the world on your own because you were taught that setting it down was never an option. The strength everyone admires is also the source of a profound and hidden loneliness. Another unusual trait closely related to this fierce independence is what we might call the emotional chameleon. While hyper-independence is about building walls to keep people out, this trait is about dissolving your own identity to be accepted by them. Have you ever been in a group, listening to a conversation, and found yourself automatically adopting the opinions and energy of the most dominant person in the room? You might even argue passionately for a viewpoint that just an hour earlier you didn't hold. Later alone, a strange sense of unease washes over you. Who was that person? Why did you say those things? This isn't about being dishonest. It's an unconscious survival mechanism honed over years of practice. For the daughter of a narcissist, becoming who you needed to be in the moment was essential for emotional and sometimes physical safety. Your childhood home was an emotional minefield. The parents' mood dictated the entire atmosphere. To survive, you became a master observer, a psychic detective attuned to the slightest shift in their tone, expression, or posture. You learned to read the air to anticipate what your parent needed you to be. The quiet, invisible child? The brilliant, high-achieving one? the compassionate confidant? You learned to play each role flawlessly because your sense of security deeped on it. Your authentic self, your own spontaneous feelings, opinions, and desires, was too risky. If your feelings contradicted your parents, they were labeled as wrong, selfish, or overly dramatic. If your successes outshone theirs, they were met with jealousy or minimization. So you learned to suppress your own inner world and instead reflect the world of the person in front of you. You became a perfect mirror. This skill is incredibly useful in the short term. It makes you highly adaptable, socially graceful, and often very well liked. People find you easy to be around because you create so little friction. You are the one who is always agreeable, who never causes trouble, who intuitively understands what others need. But what is the long-term cost of being a mirror? A mirror has no image of its own. When you're alone, when there's no one to reflect, you might be confronted with a terrifying feeling of emptiness. The question, "What do you want?" can send you into a panic. Whether it's choosing a restaurant, a career path, or a life partner, the internal compass that should guide you feels broken or non-existent. You have spent a lifetime tuning into the wants and needs of others, so the frequency of your own desires has become static. This creates a paradox. You are perceived as selfless, but your selflessness is not a conscious choice born from abundance. It's a conditioned response born from fear. The fear of being rejected, of being difficult, of being seen as too much. Your identity became tied to your utility. Your value was measured by how well you could meet the needs of the narcissist. Now, as an adult, you to seek that validation externally. You might find yourself in relationships or friendships where you once again become the caretaker, the supporter, the cheerleader, because that role is familiar. It feels safe, but it is profoundly unfulfilling because the person you are neglecting most is yourself. That quiet voice inside you that whispers, "What about me?" is the sound of your true self, the one you had to hide away, asking to finally be seen. This constant calibration to the needs of others, this life spent as either a fortress or a mirror, gives rise to one of the most insidious and hidden traits: a chronic, pervasive feeling of being fundamentally flawed. This isn't the healthy guilt you feel after making a mistake. It's a free-floating anxiety, a background hum of not enoughness that colors every success and magnifies every failure. It's the quiet, unshakable belief that if people knew the real you, they would be disappointed. Where does this come from? It's the direct result of growing up in an environment where you were held responsible for an adult's emotional state. In the world of the narcissistic parent, someone always has to be at fault, and it can never be them. Narcissism is, at its core, a defense against a deeply buried sense of shame. To avoid feeling this shame, the narcissist becomes a master of projection and blame. As a child, you were the most convenient target for this. Did your parent have a bad day at work? It was somehow your fault for being too loud when they got home. Were they unhappy with their own life choices? It was your presence that was holding them back. You became the emotional dumping ground for their frustrations, their insecurities, and their disappointments. You were handed a burden of blame that was never yours to carry, but your child's mind had no choice but to accept it. You learned that you were responsible for things far beyond your control, and this planted the seed of a deep, unearned guilt. This was reinforced by the impossible standards you were expected to meet. The goalposts were always moving. The A you got on your test was met with, "Why wasn't it an A+?" The clean room was met with a complaint about a single book left out of place. Nothing you did was ever quite enough to earn consistent, unconditional love and approval. This creates a psychological bind. You believe that if you could just be perfect, the perfect student, the perfect daughter, the perfect person, then you would finally be worthy of love. But since perfection is an impossible goal, you are locked in a perpetual state of striving and failing. This internalizes into a core belief: I am the problem. I am not good enough. As an adult, how does this manifest? Do you find yourself apologizing for things that have nothing to do with you? Do you apologize for taking up space, for having an opinion, or for asking a question? When someone gives you a compliment, does it feel deeply uncomfortable? You might smile and say thank you, but does a voice in your head immediately start listing all the reasons you don't deserve it, dismissing it as them just being nice? This is the voice of that internalized critic. It is the ghost of your parents' impossible standards, and it has taken up permanent residence in your mind. This voice is so relentless that it feels like your own. It feels like the truth. This is why you might struggle with imposter syndrome, no matter how much you achieve. Every accomplishment is met not with joy, but with a momentary sense of relief, followed by the terrifying fear that you will now be found out. You believe you fooled everyone into thinking you're competent, and it's only a matter of time before the facade shatters. This feeling of being a fraud is not a reflection of your abilities. It is a reflection of a childhood where your authentic self was deemed unacceptable. You were taught that you had to perform to be loved, so now you believe your entire life is a performance. The tragic irony is that you are often incredibly capable, conscientious, and hardworking, precisely because you are so desperate to outrun this feeling of inadequacy. But it's an unwinnable race because the finish line is a feeling of inner worthiness that no external achievement can ever give you. This profound sense of being flawed naturally extends to your relationship with your own emotions. For many daughters of narcissistic parents, there's a deep and unsettling disconnect from their inner emotional world. It's not that you don't have feelings, it's that you were taught a specific and dangerous set of rules about which feelings were permissible. This leads to another unusual trait, an inability to process and express so-called negative emotions, particularly anger. You might experience anger as either a terrifying, uncontrollable force or a feeling that is almost entirely absent, replaced instead by a chronic sadness, anxiety, or numbness. Think back to your childhood. What happened when you got angry? When you stood up for yourself, disagreed with your parent, or pushed back against an unfair demand? How was that received? For a narcissistic parent, a child's anger is not seen as a healthy expression of a boundary. It is seen as a direct challenge to their authority and control. It is a rebellion. Your anger signaled that you were a separate person with your own perspective, and that was the one thing that could not be tolerated. In response, your anger was likely met with punishment, guilt-tripping. How can you be so ungrateful after everything I've done for you? Or even rage from the parent, a terrifying display that taught you one crucial lesson. My anger is dangerous. It hurts people and it gets me hurt. So, what do you do with a core human emotion that you've learned is forbidden? You learn to suppress it. For many, this anger gets turned inward. Instead of feeling angry at someone who has mistreated you, you feel guilty, as if you did something to deserve it. Instead of righteous indignation, you feel a wave of anxiety. You might find yourself in situations where anyone else would be furious, but you just feel a deep, heavy sadness. This sadness is often a mask for the anger you were never allowed to feel. It's a more socially acceptable, less confrontational emotion. You became an expert at transmuting the fiery energy of anger into the quiet, watery grief of disappointment. People may have even labeled you as too sensitive or melancholy, when in reality you are carrying the weight of years of unexpressed rage. This can also manifest physically in chronic tension, headaches, or autoimmune issues, as the body struggles to contain the emotional energy the mind won't allow. On the other hand, some daughters experience the opposite extreme. You might go for weeks or months feeling perfectly calm, absorbing injustices and biting your tongue, operating in that familiar mode of being the agreeable, easygoing one. Then one day, something minor happens. Someone cuts you off in traffic, or a cashier is rude, and an enormous, terrifying wave of rage erupts from you. It feels completely out of proportion to the situation, and it scares you. The intensity of the reaction confirms your deepest fear. I am uncontrollable. My anger is monstrous. You feel immense shame afterward, reinforcing the childhood belief that your anger is fundamentally bad. But what's really happening is not that you are an angry person. It's that you're a person who has been storing up legitimate anger in a high-pressure container for so long that even the smallest jostle can cause an explosion. You were never taught how to release the pressure safely, a little at a time. You only know two settings: off and volcanic eruption. Both of these patterns, the complete suppression or the violent outburst, are two sides of the same coin, forged in an environment where healthy anger was simply not an option. This complex relationship with your own inner world inevitably shapes how you connect with others, leading to another deeply ingrained and often confusing trait: a powerful, unconscious attraction to emotional unavailability and chaos. On a conscious level, you want peace. You crave a stable, loving partnership where you feel safe and seen. Yet, you may find yourself repeatedly drawn to people who are distant, critical, unpredictable, or who, like your parent, require an immense amount of emotional caretaking. It's a pattern that can feel like self-sabotage, leaving you wondering, why do I keep choosing this? The answer lies in one of psychology's most fundamental principles. We are not drawn to what is healthy. We are drawn to what is familiar. Your emotional blueprint for love was drafted in a chaotic environment. The feeling of being on edge, of trying to win approval from someone withholding, of experiencing intense but intermittent moments of connection, followed by long periods of distance. This emotional roller coaster doesn't feel like danger to your nervous system. It feels like home. A kind, consistent, and emotionally available person can paradoxically create a sense of deep unease. It can feel boring, or worse, suspicious. You might find yourself thinking, what's the catch? Or waiting for the other shoe to drop, because a sustained state of peace is so foreign that your brain interprets it as the calm before the storm. There is a deeper, unconscious drive at play here as well. In psychology, this is sometimes seen as an attempt to heal an old wound by reliving it. Your younger self never got the love and validation she needed from your parent. She couldn't fix them or make them happy. Now, as an adult, your unconscious mind seeks out a person who presents a similar emotional challenge. The unspoken, deeply buried hope is, this time I'll get it right. If I can just be loving enough, patient enough, or understanding enough, I can heal this person and in doing so, finally get the love I always craved. You become the ultimate fixer, the emotional rescuer, pouring your energy into someone else's brokenness. This role feels purposeful because it is the exact role you were trained for in childhood. Your value, you learned, comes from your ability to serve and repair another person. This is why you might find yourself making excuses for a partner's inconsistent behavior, just as you once did for your parent. You tell yourself they're just stressed, they had a difficult past, or they don't really mean the hurtful things they say. You see their potential, the wounded person beneath the difficult exterior, and you make it your mission to love them into health. The problem is, this is not your mission. It is a reenactment of a childhood tragedy, and it almost always has the same ing. You up emotionally exhausted, your own needs neglected, feeling once again that you have failed. The relationship is not about mutual support, it's a project. And the tireless work you put into that project is what you mistake for love, because effort and struggle are what love has always felt like to you. This cycle keeps you trapped, not because you are broken, but because your earliest programming is running a script that desperately needs to be brought into the light of conscious awareness. All of these traits, the hyper-independence, the chameleon-like identity, the chronic sense of being flawed, the fear of anger, and the attraction to chaos, converge to create the foundation for the path forward. Recognizing these patterns is the first monumental step. But the journey of healing asks you to do something that feels counterintuitive and deeply frightening. It asks you to turn your attention inward and begin to build the very thing your childhood denied you: a stable and compassionate relationship with yourself. This isn't about blaming your parents. It's about taking radical responsibility for your own inner world now. From a Stoic perspective, you cannot change what happened to you, but you have absolute power over how you respond to its echoes in your present life. The first part of this journey involves learning to sit with your own discomfort. Your whole life has been a masterclass in avoiding certain feelings. You've become an expert at distracting yourself with work, caretaking others, or intellectualizing your emotions instead of truly feeling them. The invitation now is to become a beginner again. When that familiar wave of anxiety or shame washes over you, can you resist the urge to immediately fix it or run from it? Can you just notice it? Where do you feel it in your body? What thoughts are attached to it? This practice of simply observing your inner state without judgment is revolutionary. It's like turning the lights on in a room you've been afraid to enter your whole life. You start to see that these feelings are just energy and information. They are not the truth of who you are. The chronic guilt is not evidence of your badness, it is the echo of unearned blame. The anxiety is not a sign of impending doom, it is the stored energy of a child who had to be constantly vigilant. This leads to the crucial work of self-discovery, or what Carl Jung might call the process of becoming your true self. You spent years being a mirror, reflecting what others needed you to be. Now is the time to ask, without anyone else's input, who am I? What do I actually like? What do I believe in? What brings me a sense of quiet joy? This can be a strangely difficult and disorienting process. You might have to start with very small things. Do you prefer coffee or tea? Do you like walking in the city or in nature? These questions are not trivial. Each time you answer one honestly, without considering someone else's preference, you are casting a vote for your own authentic self. You are strengthening a muscle that has been allowed to atrophy. You are slowly, deliberately, taking the pen back and starting to write your own story in your own handwriting. A vital part of this process is accepting the parts of yourself you were taught to hide, what some call the shadow. This includes your anger. Learning to feel anger in a healthy way is not about becoming an angry person. It's about recognizing anger as a vital messenger. Anger is the guardian of your boundaries. It's the part of you that says, no, that's not okay. To begin reconnecting with it, you can start by noticing the small sparks of irritation or resentment you feel throughout the day, the ones you usually dismiss. Acknowledge them. Give them a voice, even if it's just in a private journal. I felt angry when my colleague took credit for my idea. I felt resentful when I was expected to plan the entire event. You are not acting on the anger. You are simply validating its existence. You are telling that part of yourself, I hear you. You have a right to be here. This simple act of validation is profoundly healing. It's the parenting you never received. It's you telling yourself that your feelings matter. This is the beginning of building an unshakable inner foundation of self-trust and self-respect, the very foundation that was denied to you from the start. As you start to build this inner foundation, the next logical and terrifying step is to bring this emerging self out into the world. This means learning the art of setting boundaries. For the daughter of a narcissist, the concept of a boundary can feel aggressive, selfish, or even cruel. You were conditioned to believe that your purpose was to be lessly available and accommodating. Saying no feels like you are letting someone down, or worse, that you are risking the loss of their love. But a boundary is not a wall you build to punish others. It is a line you draw to honor yourself. It is a quiet, powerful declaration that your needs, your time, and your energy are valuable. This process rarely starts with a grand confrontation. It starts small. It might be as simple as saying, I can't talk on the phone right now, but I can call you back this evening. Or, I won't be able to help with that project, but I wish you the best with it. Notice the terror that arises when you say these words. Notice the urge to over-explain, to apologize profusely, to immediately take it back. This is the old programming kicking in, warning you of imminent abandonment. Your job is to breathe through that fear and hold your ground. Each time you successfully set a small boundary and the world doesn't, you are rewriting that old script. You are providing your nervous system with new data. I can protect my own energy, and I am still safe. I can say no, and I am still worthy of connection. This practice of setting boundaries inevitably changes the nature of your relationships. You begin to notice something remarkable. People who genuinely respect you will have no problem with your boundaries. They may be momentarily disappointed, but they will understand. Your no will not threaten them. However, people who have benefited from your lack of boundaries, the emotional vampires, the perpetual takers, the ones who relied on your less capacity to give, will react very differently. They may become angry, accuse you of being selfish, or try to guilt you into returning to your old role. This is a critical moment. It will be painful, but it is also an incredibly clarifying experience. Their reaction is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of what they were getting from you. You are, in effect, conducting a test, and the results will show you who is in your life for you and who is in your life for what you can do for them. This is where the Stoic idea of focusing on what you can control becomes your greatest asset. You cannot control how another person reacts to your boundaries. You cannot make them understand or approve. All you can control is your commitment to honoring yourself. This is the shift from seeking external validation to cultivating internal integrity. Your sense of okayness no longer comes from someone else's approval. It comes from the quiet, solid knowledge that you are acting in alignment with your own needs and values. It is a slow and steady process of reclaiming your own authority. You are gently but firmly taking the seat of power in your own life, moving from the passenger who was told where to go to the driver who chooses her own destination. This is not selfish. It is the fundamental requirement for a healthy and authentic life, and it is the antidote to a lifetime of being told you were merely an extension of someone else. As you become more adept at honoring your inner world and setting external boundaries, you arrive at a profound turning point: the reparenting of yourself. This is the active, conscious process of giving yourself the emotional care, validation, and security you did not receive in childhood. It's about becoming the wise, compassionate parent you always needed. This isn't a metaphorical idea, it's a practical, daily discipline. It is the deep, internal work that cements all the other changes you've been making. It's how you build a sense of safety and worthiness that is truly unshakable because it originates from within. What does this look like in practice? It begins with changing your inner dialogue. For years, your internal monologue has likely been a harsh, critical one, the internalized voice of your narcissistic parent. It's the voice that calls you stupid when you make a mistake, or lazy when you need a rest. The first step in reparenting is to simply become aware of this voice. Notice its tone, its words, its relentless negativity. Then you consciously choose to introduce a new voice, a voice of kindness, compassion, and reason. When you spill your coffee instead of the automatic, "You're such an idiot," you can deliberately think, "It's just a spill. Accidents happen. Let's clean it up." When you feel overwhelmed and need a break, instead of pushing through with the voice of the inner slave driver, you can say to yourself, "You've worked hard. It's okay to rest now. Your well-being is important." This feels artificial and even ridiculous at first. You're essentially talking to yourself with a kindness you don't yet believe you deserve. But like any new skill, it requires practice. You are creating new neural pathways in your brain. You are actively overwriting decades of negative programming with a new, life-affirming script. This is the essence of what modern psychology tells us about neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change. You are not destined to be ruled by your inner critic forever. You have the power to cultivate an inner advocate, an inner comforter who champions you, forgives you, and encourages you. This new voice becomes your internal safe harbor. Reparenting also involves tending to your own needs, proactively and without apology. Remember that hyper-independence born from the belief that your needs were a problem? The healing for that is to intentionally identify and meet your own needs. Do you feel lonely? Instead of ignoring it, you can make a plan to call a trusted friend. Do you feel exhausted? You can cancel a non-essential plan and give yourself the gift of an evening of quiet. You start to treat your own needs with the same seriousness and urgency you once reserved for the needs of others. You begin to understand that self-care is not a selfish indulgence. It is a fundamental act of self-preservation. It is you telling yourself, you matter, your comfort matters, your peace matters. Each time you do this, you heal a small piece of the child who was taught her needs were an inconvenience. You are proving to her through your actions that she is worthy of care. This consistent, reliable attention from you, the adult, is what finally helps that inner child feel safe, seen, and deeply loved, perhaps for the very first time. It is the slow, quiet, and beautiful process of coming home to yourself. As this inner relationship blossoms, nourished by self-compassion and healthy boundaries, you will inevitably reach the stage of redefining your own strength. The unusual trait of hyper-independence, once a necessary suit of armor, begins to feel heavy and constricting. You start to see it not just as a source of pride, but as a barrier to true human connection. The journey now shifts from a focus on solitary survival to an exploration of interdependent thriving. This means learning to do one of the most vulnerable things imaginable for a daughter of a narcissist: learning to receive. This includes learning to receive help, compliments, and care from safe people. When someone offers you help, what is your first instinct? Is it to say, "No, no, I've got it," even when you're struggling? This automatic rejection is the fortress wall going up. The new practice is to pause, take a breath, and consider accepting. Allowing someone to help you is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of trust. It is an act of letting someone into your world, of showing them a part of your vulnerability. It is how genuine intimacy is built. Similarly, when someone gives you a sincere compliment, instead of deflecting it or explaining it away, the practice is to simply let it in, to say thank you and allow yourself, even for a moment, to believe it might be true. This feels incredibly uncomfortable because your core programming tells you that you are not worthy of praise and that accepting it is arrogant. But by letting it land, you are challenging that flawed belief system. You are allowing another person's positive perception to chip away at the negative self-image you've carried for so long. This new chapter also involves a conscious reevaluation of your relationships. The old pattern of being drawn to chaotic or unavailable partners begins to lose its appeal. As your own inner world becomes more peaceful and stable, you start to crave that same energy in your external relationships. The emotional roller coaster no longer feels exciting, it feels exhausting. You begin to value qualities you may have previously overlooked or dismissed as boring: consistency, reliability, and emotional maturity. You start to understand that true strength in a relationship is not found in dramatic highs and lows, but in the quiet, steady presence of mutual respect and support. This doesn't mean your life becomes devoid of passion. It means the source of your validation shifts. You are no longer trying to win love from someone who withholds it. Instead, you are looking to share the love you have already cultivated within yourself with someone who is capable of reciprocating it. You begin to see that healthy love is not about fixing or being fixed. It is about two whole people choosing to walk side by side. The greatest transformation is realizing that your worth is not determined by your ability to withstand pain, but by your courage to choose peace. Your resilience is no longer defined by how much you can endure alone, but by your wisdom to build a life filled with supportive, authentic connections. You are finally learning that true independence is not needing anyone, but true freedom is allowing yourself to be seen and supported by the right ones. This is not a loss of strength, it is its highest evolution. Your unusual traits, born of pain, have become your greatest teachers, guiding you toward a more authentic and deeply fulfilling way of being. Inner peace is no longer a distant dream, but the natural consequence of a life lived from the inside out. Your past does not have to be your prison.